Everybody, JC here, and welcome to another live stream, a Thursday night live stream. Hope everyone is having a good week overall. Tonight I thought, we'd probably talk about a bunch of things, but the gist of tonight's live stream is going to be kind of like looking at, where does this hobby go from here? Um, where do we see the companies going? Things like that. So, um, but let's take a roll call here just to see who is in the house. I see Everett is in the house tonight. So welcome, Everett. Masterverse, what's up? Corn Viper is in the house. Says he's gone to collecting vintage McFarlane. Michael is in the house. Jason, Mr. Allmine, Blade Runner, 3M, the Sci-Fi and Fantasy Cast, what's up? Julio's in the house. Blake, what's up? So it looks like we got a pretty good crowd here tonight. A lot of familiar faces. Viewmaster chiming in from Pennsylvania. Not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just kidding. I love Pennsylvania. T-Glow's in the house. Matt. Thousand Wolves. Beans in the house. So, one of the big topics. So I guess, and I've posted about this on my Facebook and stuff, but I kind of see this hobby going. I watched Hasbro's Investor Day thing the other week, where they claimed they were going to increase their profits by 50% in the next 3 years, and basically the gist I took away from it was they're going to license out their IPs to more companies, which we've already seen them do. Super 7, Diamond Select Toys, 3-0, Haya Toys, all these small companies that are now doing Hasbro based action figures. So we've definitely seen that happening already. I feel like Hasbro kind of wants to get away more and more from the manufacturing side of things, where that's where the costs are and everything. And licensing is where the money's made anyway. So if they can get these small companies to basically pay Hasbro to make products based on their IPs, and then they don't have to fool nearly as much with, the manufacturing side of the business, that to me is so much the better. Of course, if that's true, that likely means that Hasbro will start laying off portions of their workforce, which is a way that they will cut expenses to increase their profits, which is something I believe they said would happen in their Investor Day thing. So unfortunately, that means people will lose their jobs, which is always never a good thing, but also especially with large corporations, often happens on a somewhat regular basis. I think we're going to see companies more and more, and again, we've already seen this, doing the crowdsourcing thing or made to pre-order thing. In my mind, especially when we're talking about the larger companies, they're really kind of one and the same. And the main point of that is to reduce their risk. As they make these small production runs, that drives up the cost. That's one of the things that drives up the cost is they're making these small production runs of stuff catering to the diehard collector, but they're essentially covering their bases by essentially making that collector commit up front before they decide to make it. And that's the HasLab, the Mattel Creations website, all of that we're seeing from various companies. Super 7, that's been their model pretty much since day one. Super 7 does made to pre-order. Now they do let other retailers like a Big Bad Toy Store and an Entertainment Earth buy large amounts of those products, so that they can then resell them past that window. But you'll notice, Super 7 only offers items on their website for a certain period of time for pre-order, and then they close those off. So, um, I think that's a model that you're going to continue to see with more and more companies as well. Quinn, what's up, my friend? Mr. iPhone. Michael says, shouldn't it be a Preternia playset since it has the Revolution King Grayskull? I don't know, I guess. So speaking of that, let's just peek in here. So Mattel kicked off their Eternia playset crowdsourcing campaign this week. $550 plus for those in the US, a $50 surcharge, so a whopping $600 for this thing. And so far, it seems to be faring fairly well. It's just been over 24 hours since the campaign kicked off, and already it's 66% funded. It's got to get to 5,000 technically by November 10th, but I would say it really needs to get to 5,000 by next Wednesday, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But right now we're at 3,000. Actually, let me even refresh, see if it's gone up any. 3,307 backers. So it has slowed down a little bit today from yesterday, but so far it's still going at a fairly good pace. Now, the reason why I say this campaign, I feel like needs to get to 27 or get to its minimum 5,000 backers by next Wednesday, as opposed to the November 10th date, which is when technically the campaign ends, is because if it doesn't get to 5,000 by next Wednesday, then the early bird figure, the King Grayskull figure that Michael mentioned, it will not be included. So I think if that were to happen, we would see something similar like we did with the Hasbro Ghost Rider HasLab campaign, where you would start to see things go in reverse if this didn't get to the minimum 5,000 by next Wednesday. So I really feel like, even though technically, again, November 10th is the date when the campaign ends, this thing needs to get to 5,000 by next Wednesday. But right now, if it continues at the current pace that it's been going, or today, even though it slowed down from yesterday, I think it will do that. Now, if it slows down to a trickle here, and it could be a different situation. But right now, again, I think it's doing well enough that it will likely make its target by next Wednesday. Now, I think Mattel did something fairly smart here that Hasbro didn't, and that was they did not put a limit on how many you could buy of these. For some reason, Hasbro put a limit of only being able to buy 5 of the Ghost Rider. And the reason why I say that, because most of us are not going to buy multiples of these play sets. But there's a reseller market out there for these things. And so there will be resellers, people who are going to take these and resell them at a profit. They're going to raise the price. They're going to sell them for more than $550. But they're going to buy, more than, depending on how many they think they can resell, down the road, they're going to buy a number of these. So I think the resellers alone on this will push this over the top, to be absolutely honest. Now you may be thinking, well, $600 is expensive enough. Who's going to pay more? Well, there are definitely people out there who maybe right now don't have the $600 to spend, but later really want this set and eventually will save up the money or whatever, and they will want to buy this down the road. So they'll go to these resellers, and even though they'll end up paying more, they will buy it. So there is an aftermarket, demand for these things. They generally do go up in price, not down. So I think Mattel was smart not to put a limit on them. And it's not like it's not like a situation where somebody's going into the local Walmart or Target and buying out all the inventory to resell at a higher price, preventing others to be able to get those products at the actual cost. So it's not really a scalper situation, because the reseller guy, the guy who plans on reselling this, yeah, he's going to jack up the price, but you can still, if you want to go buy this now for 550 plus the $50, it doesn't matter how many the reseller buys, you still can go, pay the retail price of this item and get it if you want. So, and the reseller guy is kind of helping the campaign, because he's going to help the campaign get up to the minimum number needed for this to go into production much faster. So if you're somebody who actually wants this and wants to see it get funded, then that reseller is actually helping you out. So, I know some people are like, scalper. And, it might be, the same guy who is going to Walmart and cleaning out the shelves to resell. It might be, some of those resellers might be the same people. But again, technically in this case, I don't put it in the same category, because the reseller is not preventing you from being able to buy this at cost if you so choose. Mr. O, much persuasion, I'd probably go in business and start selling shit, but unfortunately, I don't think people really pay that close attention to what I say. Yeah, Salome has joined us, folks. No accessories for her to steal tonight, but she has joined us. Tiglu, do I think revealing Snake Mountain will hurt or help Eternia funding? Personally, well, I don't think it'll hurt it in any way, because Snake Mountain isn't going to be released until next Christmas. So if you have the money right now to fund this thing, I don't think, Snake Mountain being released a year from now is really going to prevent you from doing that. If Snake Mountain was going to be released this Christmas, then yes, it might have an effect. But because Snake Mountain is still over a year away from being released, I don't think it hurts. And in fact, for those that were like, why didn't we get Snake Mountain instead of this Eternia playset? It kind of quells those voices. So, Mattel can say, look, we're giving you both Snake Mountain and the new Eternia playset. So, in that regard, I think it only helps. The only downside there is space. So, if you've got limited space and you were already struggling to be able to find a place to put this Eternia playset, and now you got, Snake Mountain is coming, then you might be going, well, damn, where am I going to put all these playsets? So that would be the only thing I could see possibly being a downside. RC, I have no idea. Probably not until next year, I would say. They probably want to make sure those the 3-pack from Pulse gets released before they start showing off, that they're redoing those same figures. Hopefully without masks, but my guess, I mean, it's only a guess on my part, but my guess is probably not until next year. Maybe February Toy Fair time, I'm thinking. But I don't really know. Let me put it this way. If it were me, I wouldn't be showing you that we're going to be uh, redoing the 3 Spider-Man figures again until after I have sold and got shipped out the 3-pack, from a business standpoint, at least. Gee, it does. It looks, it does. It's 3 big columns with a monorail at the top. It's never been that appealing of a looking playset to me personally. I mean, I didn't collect He-Man stuff when I was a kid, and this was never featured in the original cartoon or even the comics or anything. So I didn't even know about this playset until I was an adult, and I have seen it on display at like vintage toy stores and stuff. But I agree. For me personally, I've just never found this playset to be all that appealing. Sure. I don't think they've given us a price on Snake Mountain yet, but hopefully it will be very similar to the Castle Grayskull playset. And being it is a regular, it's supposed to be a regular retail release. I would not expect it to be, over $100. Might be a little more expensive than Grayskull because of inflation over the last few years, but I would not expect it to be over $100. Mr. Allman, I have not heard anything about the Auto T figures being canceled, but it wouldn't surprise me. Walmart seems to just randomly like to cancel stuff, so wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. I personally felt those were, not worth $40 each, so I didn't get any of them myself. So Super 7 is blackmailing Thundercat collectors with Snarf. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm by no means going to sit here and tell you Snarf is worth $55, and if the added tail and a head sculpt is the justification for a $55 Snarf, my thought is I can live without those. So, give me a cheaper Snarf, but at the same time, I'm going to get Snarf, even though I don't think it's worth $55. Technically, I don't feel like the price is worth $55, but Snarf, I've been collecting the other figures, and Snarf is the last member of the main team that I need. I already have Wily Kit and Wily Cat. Thank God for Mattel, because if they're going to sell Snarf as a single release for 55, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't sell, when they eventually give us Wily Kit and Wily Cat, they won't end up selling those as single releases, $55 each. Uh, but so it is kind of, I wouldn't be surprised if Super 7 basically said, yeah, people are going to bitch about the price, but most people are still going to get it because they're going to want Snarf in their collection. So probably something along those lines. I wouldn't be surprised. And it does kind of suck, but like I said, I can afford it. I mean, it's not that I can't afford it. So in this case, I'm going to pay it because Snarf is important enough to me, you know. And to give Super 7 credit, Super 7 is the only company that has given us the entire Thundercats team in modern times. Um, would I rather had Bandai America given us the entire team at $20 a figure? Heck yeah, but they didn't. They bailed on the line because it wasn't selling that great at retail. Mattel bailed on the line. Mattel's figures weren't that cheap, but they bailed on the line too. So Super 7 is the only one that has given us Thundercats. They were willing to make small enough production runs on the figures so that we could get the entire team. And so, I'm going to give them my $55 on this figure. But where they're not going to get, and I'm sure they've already realized this will happen sooner or later, is I'm not going to be so inclined to get figures like Willa and the Mongor guy, which I didn't even remember. I had to Google him when I saw him revealed at New York Comic Con because I didn't even remember. It was like a goat looking guy. So I'm going to pass on those guys because they're such obscure characters. I mean, Willa was, I definitely remember from the cartoon, but she wasn't like a character I've been dying to get. So I'm going to pass on those because they're just, to me, not worth paying $55 for. So that kind of goes back to when we talk about where we get people trying to break down the price of these things from a production standpoint, and to I constantly say that's not really that important. What's important is how much is it worth it to you. Snarf's worth it to me to pay $55 for. Willa is not. So even though Willa's a little bit taller figure, I'm going to get Snarf before I'm going to get Willa. But because the prices are high, I'm going to be much more selective. I'm not going to just buy every Thundercat figure that they put out there. And again, I'm sure Super 7 realizes this, that, Thundercats is not a line that is going to have a lot of longevity to it, because once you get through all the main characters, I'm sure they realize their sales are going to start dipping. So, they weren't making like a ton of them to begin with. And then again, as they start getting more and more into the obscure characters, their sales are going to dip until the point where they probably will cease making them. But but they got us the main characters. They got us the main team characters. They got us the main villains. And to me, that's what was really important. But that is another, going back to the original topic of tonight's live stream of the future of this hobby. That's really another, example of, a company making something that really probably doesn't have enough demand to support it at mass retail. So they're making really small production runs at a premium price, $55, $65, but they are getting us characters that we probably would not otherwise see getting released. So it's come down to, are you willing to pay for those characters that you've been wanting, those obscure things, the Eternia playset, which, would have never been released likely at regular retail. So are you willing to pay that premium price just to get that item? The production of it, I have no idea how much it costs Mattel to make that playset, but they're providing you something that a lot of probably diehard Masters of the Universe collectors have been wanting. The original vintage Eternia playset, from my understanding, is considered kind of a holy grail item. So, them giving you an opportunity to buy that playset at $600, a new one, at $600, as opposed to going out and trying to buy a vintage one that goes for at least a couple $1,000 usually, um, is it worth paying for? And I think in the case of the Eternia playset, we are once again seeing people, it's the price, it's a steep price, but it's not preventing people from buying it. As opposed to the Ghost Rider, the HasLab Ghost Rider, which, let's is now down to 5,168 backers. So that continues to go down even after showing it off at New York Comic Con this past weekend. That did not do anything to turn the backer count around. Revealing the 2 stretch goals did nothing to really reverse course. And again, I go back to, it's not the price as much as Hasbro chose poorly in doing something that just did not have as wide a demand to get people to be willing to pay that much for it. If they wanted to release a Robbie Reyes and his car, they should have made it cheaper. I'm not saying that Hasbro is lying to us about the production cost of it. But I'm saying they could have found a way to make this cheaper. They didn't have to throw in all the lights. They could have just given us essentially the car as a plastic shell that your figure could sit in, and then just give us the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider figure, and then sold it at retail for under $100. They could have done that if I have no doubt they could have done that if they wanted to, and whether people bought it or not, that's a different story. Those cosmic Ghost Riders ended up, at least around me, ended up sitting on the shelves until they were discounted. So, I don't know how many people would have bought even a cheaper Robbie Reyes and Ghost Rider, and I don't know if it would have been enough to support it at regular retail. But I have no doubt that Hasbro could have made this more cheaply. But for whatever reason, they decided to go this route, and it didn't pay off for them this time. It's not going to make it. I feel, there's very little chance this is going to end up getting backed. So, but again, to me, it's, while everyone bitches about the price, and certainly if it was cheaper, more people would have probably bought it. But I also feel like what really screwed this one over was just picking something that was not in that much demand. It, like, going back to the Thundercat example, it would be like the difference between releasing a main Thundercats team member as the HasLab, or going and picking an obscure character like a Willa or somebody like that, and then throwing that up on HasLab and expecting people were going to back it. And I feel like that's what kind of happened here with the Ghost Rider. Quinn, Hasbro says chose the wrong Ghost Rider for the 40th anniversary, and I, I agree with you to a certain extent. I feel like probably YouTube's giving me an error saying you guys are having. It went away. Never mind. So Quinn, I agree with you that out of the three Ghost Riders, Robbie Reyes, maybe not the least. I mean, for me personally, Dan is my favorite Ghost Rider, but I'm not going to sit here and say he's more popular than Robbie Reyes. But probably Johnny Blaze is, the original Ghost Rider is probably the most popular Ghost Rider. But the problem with Johnny Blaze, of course, is we've already gotten Johnny Blaze. We've gotten Johnny Blaze, with the bike, and then we're getting the second Johnny Blaze. Now, they didn't have to necessarily do the second one right now if they wanted to do it as a HasLab. But the fact that we've already gotten Johnny Blaze and his bike, I feel like would have detracted from them trying to do a better version through HasLab. So while I agree overall, technically, I don't know if you guys can still